Boruto's current villain is quite intriguing. The data we have on them is minimal to say the least, but it does add a certain level of mystery to the story which makes us want to learn more. You see, ever since the Ten Tails evolved into these Shinju entities, everyone has been focused on their power level and motives, which makes perfect sense since both are integral to the progression of the story. But what I haven't seen anyone address are the abilities these entities may possess. Now at face value, this might seem like a daunting task, because if we haven't seen much from these characters as yet, how can we then make an accurate assumption about their latent abilities? Well, it all goes back to their genetic makeup, which is that of the Ten Tails, and also one of the most documented dojutsus in the entire franchise, that being the Renegon. You see, while these Shinjus are technically recent additions to the story, the same doesn't apply to the power from which they derived. We've seen the Ten Tails in play before. It's a massive source of power that's able to bestow unique abilities to the ones who are able to wield it. And one such unique ability would be the True Seeker Orbs. Now, if you guys have read Naruto before, you know that this ability, as simple as it may seem, is one of the most broken jutsus in the entire franchise. You see, these are pretty much orbs of high density chakra similar to Boruto's Compression Rasengan. The main difference is that these orbs can only be attained by someone who possesses the power of 6-path Senjutsu, which of course stems from the Ten Tails itself. This was seen back in Shippuden, where Obito, who became the first Ten Tails Jinchuriki, was able to awaken said orbs, which allowed him to shift the battle in his favor. Now of course you guys might be wondering what's so great about these orbs and why it's something Boruto should be afraid of. Well, for one, these orbs possess the ability to turn anything it touches to dust. This was shown by Obito being able to instantly erase the bodies of his opponents, as was the case for the Edo Tensei Hokage. Now this ability is a bit confusing for some, and I totally understand why that's the case, but let me explain it in a way where it should make sense. So, True Seeker Orbs naturally possess the ability to turn the bodies of things it touches to dust, but it also possesses a separate ability which allows it to negate all forms of ninjutsu. For example, before Jubito became stable and fully understood how to use his abilities, the True Seeker Orbs were only able to temporarily disable the Edo Tensei Hokages. That's mainly because Edo Tensei itself allows their bodies to reform after some time, which pretty much makes them immortal, which is also why they had to seal them to get rid of them. So while Obito had the ability to instantly kill anyone he touched with his TSO, the Edo Tensei had the benefit of coming back, which posed a problem. Now this of course changed after Obito gained full control over his newfound powers, which allowed him to awaken Yin Yang Release. This was confirmed by Tobirama when he said that Obito is now using a jutsu based on shadow and light styles that's able to nullify all ninjutsus, which explained why the Edo Tensei bodies were no longer reforming after being hit by Obito's True Seeker Orbs. By the way, TSO themselves are made up of every chakra nature, which is actually the secret behind it being able to erase the things it comes in contact with. Now this makes sense since elemental ninjutsu or nature release is made up of 2 or more chakra natures, and the dust release is one of those nature releases, which is actually the basis behind particle style, the same ability the Tsuchikage uses to erase people and objects. So since TSO possesses all chakra natures, it's able to perform dust release if the user intends it. By the way, that's also why Obito was able to use one of his TSO to perform explosion release, since it's a combination of lightning and earth which the TSO consists of. So as stated by Hiruzen, it's a combination of more than 4 changes in nature. In fact, it's more than a Kekkei Genkai or Kekkei Tota, which simply means that it reaches the level of Kekkei Mora. Now what constitutes a Kekkei Mora isn't truly known, but what we do know is that it's an advanced version of Jutsu unique to Kaguya and her direct bloodline. But my headcanon or my personal theory is that the TSO is actually one of the divine abilities known as Shinjutsu, which was recently revealed in Boruto's manga. Which is actually quite funny since the entire premise of this video is that the abilities the Shinju may possess is due to them being part of the Ten Tails. So if the TSO is actually Shinjutsu, then that clearly wouldn't be the case. What I will say is that even though TSO is awakened through possessing 6-path Senjutsu which derives from the Ten Tails, it can also be considered Shinjutsu as well. Now the reason why this can make sense is because an Otsutsuki needs to be fed to the Ten Tails in order for it to evolve into a divine tree, thus producing a chakra fruit, which stands to reason that the original Ten Tails also underwent this process. That would simply mean that the original Ten Tails also possessed the power and chakra of the Otsutsuki it consumed, along with the power and genetic data of Kaguya herself, since Kaguya also merged with that Ten Tails. So someone gaining the ability to use Shinjutsu by becoming the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails isn't far-fetched. stretch, especially since Ada and Damon gain access to Shibai Shinjutsu by having some of his cells implanted. So while this might be headcanon, I'd more so consider it a logical conclusion. Now this also applies to the Shinjus as well, due to them being part Otsutsuki, and that's because Ishiki's essence played a major role in their creation as stated by Boruto. So them gaining the ability to use Shinjutsu through that process isn't far-fetched either. One thing I will say is that Ishiki never displayed the ability to use the Truseeker orbs, and neither did Momoshiki. So it might be an ability specific to Kaguya's bloodline, which likely means that Jura wouldn't be able to attain this power. Now, that aside, TSO isn't without its limitations since the user loses control over them if the distance between them stems beyond 70 meters. But it kinda makes up for it by being extremely malleable, since the user can expand or condense the orb to their liking, whilst also having the ability to transform it into whatever shape they can imagine. Now, the ability does possess one major weakness, which is nature energy. In fact, Kurama goes on to state that the power of the Ten Tails is the same as which circulates the world, that which you feel in the soil, the water, and air. We also got this visual representation of its immense power after Naruto tried to gauge it by entering Sage Mode. All could see was just how immeasurable it truly is. Now what this means is that similar to how the Biju themselves are just masses of enormous power that are capable of taking a physical form, the same applies to the Ten Tails as well. Which means that at its core the Ten Tails is more than likely just the mass of natural energy itself in physical form. The reason why this is important is because Naruto was able to damage Obito due to him being the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails. He further went on to explain that Toad attacks are made with Senjutsu, which means that they use nature energy. So since the Ten Tails was nature energy itself or consisted of natural energy, maybe you can counter natural energy with natural energy. And this is really important because the Ten Tails Jinchuriki was immune to non-Senjutsu based techniques. Now this of course brings us back to the Shinju, who aren't necessarily just fragments of the Ten Tails, since they also possess Code's chakra and claw marks. That should be enough to make them susceptible to nature-based abilities specifically. What this could also mean is that these entities similar to the Ten Tails Jinchuriki might be immune to non-nature based attacks, which would explain why the Bug Shinju was able to easily shrug off Boruto's Chidori stream for the most part. That then also means that only individuals capable of manipulating nature energy and perform sage attacks would be effective against the Shinju in battle. Or of course you could just possess strong taijutsu or just be that much stronger so that technicality wouldn't matter. So someone on Boruto's team who possesses sage powers such as Kashin Koji or Sage Mitsuki would be a great counter to the Shinju and TSO, which means that they would be able to damage them and their attacks won't be negated. In closing, we also have Kaguya's expansive TSO, which was stated to have the power to destroy an entire world. In fact, Black Zetsu goes on to claim that it would have ended the entire time-space itself, which is absolutely insane. Now, she was only able to do this by using all the chakra of the humans stored within the infinite Tsukunomi, which simply means that the amount of damage you're able to accomplish with a TSO purely depends on the amount of chakra you have at your fingertips. Now next on the list we have Wood Release. This ability isn't quite prominent in the Naruto universe since only one character was ever able to naturally awaken it, that being Hashirama. This allowed him to create wood structures from his own chakra, manipulate existing plant life, and also allowed him to create his infamous golem and Buddha statue. Now the specifics behind how he was able to awaken this specific nature release is unknown at this point, but it likely had something to do with him being the reincarnation of Ashura along with being a blood descendant of Hagoromo, but who knows. Mind you, it was also stated that Moegi possesses this ability in Boruto's databook, but we've never seen her use it once, so it's a bit weird. That aside, we do know that the Ten Tails, being a tree, seems to possess the ability to manipulate wood release, so it stands to reason that the person using the power of the Ten Tails would also possess that power. By the way, this isn't really an hypothesis since we've already seen Jura use wood release multiple times at this point, though not at the same level of Hashirama. Now, third on the list we have the Biju Bomb, which is pretty much just a mass of condensed chakra. These are said to be made using a combination of positive black chakra and negative white chakra. Users typically gather and balance the chakra in their mouths, shape it into a sphere, and then fire it at their targets. This seems to be quite different with Jura since he was able to create this using his eyeball instead. Now this could be Kishimoto signifying that this is some advanced version of the jutsu, or that Jura is just a better user. But it could also be the case that it's just meant to add some flair, but we'll see. Now the next ability we might see the Shinjus use is the Ten Tails Cataclysm. Now this ability is pretty insane because just by messing with the natural energy of the planet using its own chakra, the Ten Tails is then able to create a variety of natural disasters that devastate a surrounding area, with itself acting as their epicenter. This includes earthquakes, floods, thunderstorms, and even tornadoes. And get this, these concurrent events result in a blast akin to a nuclear explosion, even forming a vast mushroom cloud as seen in the war. So this might even be the ability they used to destroy the village, but Boruto was able to stop it before it completely erased everything, because the ability is actually quite busted and likely scales to the power of the user. It's somewhat akin to how Sasuke creates Kirin by manipulating the atmospheric temperatures and directing natural lightning. It's just way more powerful. Now the Ten Tails also possesses what we'd call lesser abilities, but still quite useful in a sense, such as the ability to manipulate and shape its own body to some extent, allowing it to regrow limbs, purging burning flesh from its main body, and even forming additional hands to grab enemies, which is similar to what Naruto does while in his KCM state. By the way, we've seen the Shinjus utilize this ability, with Hidari shaping his hand into a sword, and the Bug Shinju's hand taking on the form of a serpent or dragon. Now this does bring up an interesting point about whether we can attribute the abilities displayed by the 9 Biju to that of the Ten Tails, because of course they stem from the Ten Tails. So does a Ten Tails naturally possess the ability to use Boy release similar to the 5 Tails, or maybe even Lava release similar to the 4 Tails? Nothing truly confirms or denies this, but you can argue the point using the Tsusigor, which naturally possess all chakra natures, which then allows it to use nature-based Kekai Genkai such as Dust and Explosion release. All of this stems from the power of the Ten Tails through 6 paths Senjutsu, which is awakened by becoming the Ten Tails Jinchuriki. So the logical thread does exist, but since it's not established as a fact, we can just leave it as a possibility. Now another lesser known ability is the ability to produce fission beams, which are pretty much segmented portions of the Jubi's body. These mini Jubi clones are similar to the clawgrams created by Code in that they work purely based on instinct or directive given by the main body. I don't see this being useful for the Shinju, but it's still an ability they do possess. With that said, let's move on to the Renegon abilities, since all of them possess Renegons. Now I want to preface this by saying that I'm fully aware of the fact that these Renegons are not created equal, and some of them possess different abilities. At the same time, I feel comfortable doing this since the official cover shows that Jura's Renegon is purple-ish, which is of course the color of Madara's and Sasuke's Renegons. So I can then go on to say that this is indeed a possibility, that these Shinjus may possess abilities similar to theirs. By the way, Urshiki's use of the Renegon substantiates this hypothesis, since the abilities he was able to use changed based on which color Renegon he was using at that time. In fact, his red Tomei Renegon gave him the ability to use Yomotsu Hirasaka, which is literally stated to be only accessible by the primordial Dojutsu, that being Kaguya's red Tomei Renegon or Reni Sharingan. So I think there is sufficient evidence to at least see this as a high probability. With that said, what are these abilities? Well, of course, this takes us back to Naruto. You see, the first person we ever saw use the Renegon was Nagato Uzumaki, who actually got the Renegon itself from Madara Uchiha, who awakened it by awakening Hagoromo's chakra. He then went on to master this new power, which manifested in him being able to use all 7 paths. In this example, we have Nagato, who used the Outer Path ability of his Renegon to manipulate up to 6 bodies as if they were his own. That's because the Outer Path has the ability to control life and death itself. But the main point is that he's able to bring people back to life or control corpses by transferring his chakra into them using black receivers. Now what's interesting to point out is that when the latter happens, the control bodies tend to possess the dojutsus of the jutsu's caster, regardless of what it is. This is shown not only by Nagato's Renegons being reflected into the eyes of the paths of pain, but also Obito's Sharingan being reflected in the eyes of the Jinchurikis he had under his control. So in both cases, the bodies being controlled didn't possess actual Renegons of their own, it was just a mere reflection of the jutsu's caster, which then allowed him to link his vision to theirs or their vision to his, along with also passing on an ability of the Renegon to them as well. So in this instance, referring to the Shinjus, it may also be the case that these entities are just using a shared vision with the main host or the actual Renegon user, which would be either the main body of the Ten Tails or the leader of the Shinju, who appears to be Jura. Now there is one main difference you could point out that could reveal a flaw in the analysis, which is the fact that these new beings seems to possess individual personalities, as opposed to the corpses being controlled by the Outer Path as seen in the past. Now my answer to this would be to draw a comparison between this technique, the Outer Path ability, and Edo Tensei, which pretty much allows the user to summon the soul of a deceased person back to the land of the living. This then allows for the person being used to retain their memories and personalities. We saw this back in Shippuden with the 4 Hokages having full autonomy over their bodies, but only because Orochimaru allowed them to do so. If he didn't want them to, they would just be puppets similar to the bodies used by the Outer Path of Pain. But as I pointed out earlier, the Outer Path's ability wasn't only used to just control corpses, but also the Jinchuriki who were brought back to the land of the living using Edo Tensei. So yeah, a lot of people thought that Obito just used rods to control their corpses similar to what Nagato did to create his pains, but that wasn't the case, as you can see by them having the cracks on their skin and possessing the darkened sclera. I mean, Killer Bee outright states this after the Two Tails regenerated her chest with the same paper-like effect as Edo Tensei. So what this simply means is that you can use the Outer Path ability to control bodies that possess an active soul, and you can also share your visual prowess with that body, as Obito did with the Jinchuriki. You can also choose whether or not to suppress that soul, which is what Obito did when the 6 Tails Jinchuriki tried to speak with Naruto. So in this case, it wouldn't be that different if we assume that the 10 Tails was also able to gain sentience and separate its consciousness into multiple bodies. Or it could also be the case that not only did it gain sentience, but also copied the mannerisms and personalities of the individuals that got devoured, which then manifested in the 4 Shinjus having different personalities. So it could be the case that all the Shinjus are connected visually, while still possessing individual personalities through the power of the Outer Path. By the way, we literally saw the 10 Tails use something similar to the Outer Path ability to place a Renegon on a Clawgrime who attacked Kawaki, which then allowed it to see and even speak through the Clawgrime, similar to how Nagato was able to see and speak through the Paths of Pain. And though both he and Obito needed to use the chakra receivers to control the bodies using chakra, that might not be necessary for the 10 Tails, since the Clawgrimes and the Shinju were both created using the body and chakra of the 10 Tails itself. So that connection is already there at a genetic level. Now the next crazy Renegon ability we might see make a return is Shurado, or better known as the Ashura Path. This technique grants the user the ability to form up to 4 additional limbs and 2 additional faces. The body is also augmented by mechanical weaponry, which the user can access at will. They can also fire their hands as long-range projectiles, or even pull them off to reveal and fire clusters of segmented missiles at targets. It gets even crazier because they're also able to protrude a set of flexible blades or drills, or a series of mechanical tendrils from their arms, as well as quickly propel themselves forward by emitting a burst of chakra from the holes in their feet. The user can also release a powerful chakra blast which is capable of destroying numerous buildings at once, either by transforming one of their hands into a cannon or by opening the crown of their head. So it's just a crazy ability that does anything Kishimoto wants it to do, I guess, but it would be cool to see it again. Now what's also cool is the human path's ability called Ningendo. This grants the user of the Renegon the ability to read the mind of any target by placing his hand on the target's head or chest and yanking the soul out of their body. So while it provides intel by getting well-guarded secrets from the mind itself, the technique inevitably kills the target since it also takes your soul. Now aside from the obvious use cases against the side characters, I wonder if we might see a case where it's being used by Jura or Hidari to extract Momoshiki's soul from Boruto's body. Because while Momoshiki's mind started to merge with Boruto's pre-time skip, it is possible that Boruto found a way to stop that process, which likely involves him not using the Karma Seal. So it is possible that whatever is left of Momoshiki's soul can be removed using the human path ability. Now I'm sure you guys are saying that this won't work because Sasuke would have tried it with his Renegon, but the writer can come up with any reason why it wasn't possible for Sasuke but might be for the Shinju. So it's not a big deal and likely won't happen anyway, but it would be cool to see. Next on the list we have the Animal Path, which grants the Renegon user the ability of summoning various animals and creatures to aid in battle. These creatures appear to be mortal for the most part as they were killed and later summoned again. Also note that summoning creatures using the Animal Path requires no blood sacrifice or hand seals, and also allows you to summon people as was the case for Nagato's paths. The main use case for these animals is just a form of distraction for the most part, but I can see them causing some trouble for the characters who can't just obliterate them without leaving any room for regeneration. Now the Predator Path is a bit simpler, but it also has greater use cases since it allows the user to absorb any kind of chakra based attacks. So unlike the Karma Seal, which has a limitation when it comes to jutsus that contain physical matter, the Predator Path has no such limitation, allowing the fact that it's stated to possess a bottomless pit, which also means that there's no limit to how much it can absorb, which is absolutely insane. So yeah, Kishimoto didn't care about like balancing when it comes to this specific ability, so it doesn't have any downsides whatsoever. Up next we have the Naruka Path or Jikudo Kudo. or Jikokudo. Now this grants the user two main abilities, interrogation and restoration, by using the King of Hell, which is pretty much a large head that sprouts from the ground surrounded by purple flames. Now in order to interrogate someone, the narcopath only needs to catch hold of a person, causing the King of Hell to appear before them. With the victim seemingly paralyzed, the narcopath begins questioning them. And after answers are given, the King of Hell will unzip its mouth to release tendrils that would then extract an aberration of the victim's life force energy. The King of Hell would then proceed to pass its judgment. If the person was lying or refused to answer the questions, the King of Hell would then remove their tongue and consume it, apparently killing them. But if the person tells the truth, they would be spared, although left extremely exhausted. Now, the second ability the narcopath possessed is the ability to repair any damage. To do this, the King of Hell would first need to ingest the damaged body. Then after some time, the damaged body will emerge from its mouth completely rejuvenated. So with these abilities, the narcopath can be regarded as one of the most valuable bodies if the 6 paths of pain is being used through 6 different bodies, which would make the dynamic of the Shinjus very interesting if that was the case here as well. Now last but certainly not least, we have the Deva path. This one grants the user the ability to manipulate attractive and repulsive forces with objects and people, which is better known as Almighty Push and Universal Pull. These techniques, however, cannot be performed in rapid succession. The amount of time required to recharge after use varies depending on the scale of the technique used, 5 seconds being the basic minimum. The Deva path also grants the user another ability called Shibaku Tensei, which allows the user to create a huge makeshift terrestrial body using all of the surrounding matter that is attracted to the black sphere created by this technique. Madara was also able to use its power to summon 2 giant meteors from outer space, which he then landed on the Shinobi Alliance, so the ability is a bit busted. It can also allow the user to levitate by likely manipulating the gravitational force around them, but this was only shown by Nagato. So as you can see, the purple Renegon is pretty overpowered already, so just imagine someone with Jura's or Hidari's power level using it to its fullest potential. It would be awesome. Now it does have other abilities such as summoning the demonic statue from the outer path, which of course is referring to the Gedo statue, the husk of the original Ten Tails. But I'm not sure if this Renegon will be able to summon that Ten Tails husk, since it stems from the power of another Ten Tails. The mechanics of which Ten Tails the Renegon is able to summon hasn't been established as yet, but the Gedo statue does have another broken ability which involves stealing souls again. In this case, rather than requiring a blood offering as other summons do, the statue instead drains the user's life force. In one instance, when Nagato summoned the statue, black receivers extended from its abdomen and pierced his back, rendering his body emaciated. The statue's mouth then emitted chakra in the form of a dragon capable of extracting chakra from anything it touches, killing humans immediately. And after serving its purpose, the statue then disappeared while leaving the receivers broken off and embedded in Nagato's back. So this jutsu is what you'd call a one-hit kill, but it also has serious consequences as seen with Nagato, which makes sense given the effectiveness. Now the only other jutsu that comes anywhere close to this is Infinite Tsukunomi itself, which pretty much insta-negs everyone on the planet. It then puts everyone in a dream world while extracting their chakra using the God Tree and then transforms their body into white Zetsus. Now this likely won't happen since the Shinjus don't possess the Renin Sharingan needed to activate the jutsu, and they also haven't evolved into a God Tree as yet since they first need to consume an Otsutsuki. So out of all the abilities on the list, it's the least of anyone's concern, at least for now. But yeah, that's it for the video guys. These are all the abilities that the Ten Tails may possess later on, and of course this is being recorded before the latest chapter comes out, so if anything does occur in that chapter, I'm not able to put it into this video before then of course you guys know we're just going to make an update video later on to discuss those specific abilities. But of course there are other abilities that we didn't mention, like maybe creating rods or so on and so forth, that could be associated with the Renegon specifically, but those are like lesser abilities that no one really cares about, okay? So these are the really special abilities that if they're being brought back into the story, I'd really love to see them, because Sasuke really did not do these abilities justice. So if the Shinjus are able to bring them back, or maybe Hidari is able to redeem Sasuke here with the Renegon, that would be awesome. But guys, let me know your thoughts down below. Did I miss anything else that you need me to cover? And what are your thoughts on these specific abilities? Would you like to see them in the series or not? Let me know why in the comment section. Drop a like if you like the video, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.